Welcome back to the Sunrise Safari here with, at Djuma Private Game Reserve here in the Sabi Sands. And what a fantastic buffalo sighting that we've had with this particular carcass. All these vultures in this melee around this carcass this morning. Has been a hive of activity actually since we've got here, which was about 10 or 15 minutes ago. It just hasn't stopped, the seething mass of vultures. It's a beautiful day out here. Very few clouds in the sky, not a cloud above my head right now, and about 77 degrees, 13 degrees centigrade. It is ramping up to be an epic day. And while myself and Brian were just sitting over here, we heard the Birmingham boys, what sounded like the Birmingham boys, just in the bushes to the back, roaring their heads off. So they're still in attendance over here. And what we'll do when we finished having a look at these vultures is going to go have a look at them and see what they got up to last night. From what I understand from the Zoomies, from our Zoomies, Chris and Lynn, thanks Chris and Lynn for updating us all on some lion activity. Apparently a male lion walked right up to the dam wall, or up to the water last night, stood there for a minute or two and then walked off again, which is not uncommon for lion to do. But thank you for giving us the update there, that's much appreciated. And let's just have a look at these vultures at the moment. They are really having an absolute party around this, what's left of this buffalo carcass. You can see that predominantly they're white-backed vultures. The bushveld vulture. Chasing one another, biting one another. I mean, it's just absolute chaos. As the meat starts to finish, the energy around the carcass will get even more intense, and literally they will finish almost every last scrap of meat that's there, leaving only the sinews and the meat between the bones for the hooded vultures to come and take care of. Look at that big guy there, wings open, standing on top of his carcass. That does one flying off. You can have a look at their faces, are dark from all the meat that they've been eating. And very necessary. Vultures are an absolute necessity out here. Otherwise you'd have a bunch of meat and bacteria rotting and lying about in the bush, which you don't really want. So they play a very important ecological role in getting and reducing bacterial numbers out here. Have a look at their backs now towards us. There you can see that characteristic white back. Okay, the one just turned away from us now, but there we go. Yeah. It's all like I'm the king of the castle. It's a big game that they're playing at the moment. Now, it's not often that we see vultures around a carcass like this. But if you have any questions, they're not going to be eating for too much longer. I don't see too much meat left on that kill actually. But if you want to send us some questions that we can try and answer while we're watching them, you're welcome to use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you could send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv, and we'll try our best between Tara and Jess in final control, and myself and Brian out here, and Jamie and Andrew to try and answer them as quickly as well we can, I suppose. Wow. Now, because the carcass was opened already by the lions, there was no need for a lappet-faced vulture here. They are the largest of the vultures, and it's their job to open up carcasses, and because they're the biggest, strongest vultures, they often get first choice. But I haven't seen a lappet-faced vulture here. I actually haven't seen a lappet-faced vulture at Djuma while I've been here since April. But these are all bushveld or white-faced or white-backed vultures, and their job is to eat the insides of a carcass. They're very good meat eaters. They've got almost a serrated tongue. They can pick up slippery, slimy bits and pieces of meat. There we go. Listen carefully. Listen. There, they finished roaring. I hope that you heard that. That was epic. Nice, huge coalition of males roaring their defiance at whatever else is around over here. I haven't heard an answering roar yet. In fact, the only thing to answer is a hyena. Wow. Hyena whooping, that's what the vultures... So we've got a few hyena whooping around us. Just one giving a big whoop now. And it was answered by a smaller one. Just two hyena answering the lion's challenge. Nothing else has answered their challenge. I wonder what has happened to those Matimba males. Here we've got a vulture coming into the melee carrying a mouthful of grass. I don't know if he's using it as a peace offering. How bizarre is that? That vulture just walking in from the left over there had a mouthful of grass when he walked into the kill, and then promptly put the grass down and joined in the fray. Maybe he bought with a face cloth. As you can see, the frenzy around the carcass is starting to die down. Meat is pretty much finished. So ex-Ranga in Hobart, Tasmania asked a very good question here. If a predator had to come and run into this kill, would the vultures, would they not be able to fly away? Would they not be able to get away because of their full bellies, or because of the fact that the bush looks so thick? You know, the vultures are fairly aware of their surroundings. They flew into the trees when we arrived here, and we were probably about 100 yards, 100 meters away from them when we got in. And they flew into the trees, saw we weren't a threat, and then descended again. And you know, the dozens of times that I've seen vultures on kills, I've never really ever seen one be caught by anything. I have seen pictures of it though, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen a vulture caught by anything. You do sometimes find a hyena, jackal, and lion moving in on them if they are a little bit too bold around the carcass, but for the most part, by the time vultures move in, the kills are usually finished for the predators. Have a look at those. I love the fact they make them stand on top of their carcass. I just heard that Edward says that the challenge has been accepted, that the lions laid down. The hyenas have said that they also part of this environment. Ooh, there we go. What's coming in here? Okay, so we got one brave soul. So there's a very good example of what happens when something the vultures don't like happens. So I don't think anything has walked in. I think it was just one getting a fright that caused the general panic. Straight back to eating again. I've got some soft contact calls happening from these lions lying just off of this carcass. I think now would be a pretty good time for us to go and see if we can find these male lions. sounds like the one is moving away from us. Just getting these very soft contact calls. Definitely hearing one off to the left, further left of. Lynn's asked a nice question. Do vultures get TB from eating the buffalo? And Lynn, you very good assumption there. Vultures are the vectors for a lot of diseases, which means that they carry the diseases, they can transmit the diseases, but they don't get sick from the diseases. And in particular, the one that the vultures are most commonly known for is anthrax. So vultures are immune to anthrax and are the vectors for it, and spread anthrax precisely by doing what you're watching now, by feeding on carcasses and therefore picking up the anthrax spores and then going to go and bath in dams around. Anthrax gets washed off and lies in the bottom of the pans, and then when the drought comes, or when the dry season comes, all the spores are lying at the bottom of those pans, and the animals drinking from the muddy water get sick from it. So not too natural as environment over here as is a butterfly. Very necessary. Watch out for the thorns here, Brian. I'm going to pull your face off. Okay, so we got what sounds like a male lion making a contact call off in this direction over here, and the other group just here. I don't think they're too far from us, although famous last words. Let's see what we can pull out of the bush over here. Watch out here. Okay. Doing my best to try and camouflage Bright. I'm gonna have to take this one a bit wide. Okay, you might hear a bit of screeching going on. It's not too much of a problem. Okay, I've got a male lion right in front of me. Sorry about that, it was just us getting through that thick bush. Here we've got this male lion right here. Sorry, that bush attacks my microphone. He looks like he wants to go back to the kill. Let's see what he can do. Not much meat left on that carcass. In actual fact, there's nothing left on that carcass, so I doubt he'll stick around for too long. Let's just get through this thick bush over here. I see him sniffing around. Turn around over here so we can get a better look at him. They're still sniffing around. This is very close to where the lions were lying yesterday afternoon. It looks like I can see a bit of vehicle tracks. Sorry, Mom. My shiny bald spot getting in your way again. So these male lions definitely look like they still got their blood up. Oh, they're in such good condition. They really are. He's an enormous bodied lion. Okay, he's now moving towards where we heard the other males roaring. No doubt that they're here somewhere. We're gonna just keep our eyes open and see where this guy goes. Alright. He's on a game path, definitely got some smell in his nose. He's just off to our right hand side now. I'm going to see if I can get in front of him. The bush is a little bit thick where we are now. But this is about where I would imagine the other lions were roaring from. Not too far from where we are right now. It's one of the scariest things that you can have a male lion walking straight at you like this. The Maasai in Kenya believe that a real man's only allowed to be scared 3 times in his life. The first time when he's a young boy and he's lying in his mother's arms and he hears a male lion roar. The second time when he sees the lion's footprints in the dust around the cattle that he's looking after. And the third time when he stands down a charge of a full-grown male lion with nothing but his spear in his hand. And if he survives that, there's nothing to be scared of in this world. And I must be honest, I think there's merit in that saying. So, get through here. I don't quite know what he is busy smelling around. You might find that this is the 4th or the 5th member of the coalition that's now just looking for his brothers. Okay, I've got some more lions on our left hand side. Let's go and have a look. Yeah, it looks like they're all here. This is the looks like the 4th member. Blair has made a mention that this is Blondie, one of the Birmingham boys that was named in November last year. Thank you, Blair. Nice big guy, I must be honest with you. We've got 4 male lions here with a 5th busy joining them. So the whole coalition is here. Just want to see what's going to happen to this one lion. Looks like he's giving him a bit of a stalk. We're just going to have to go around this bush here quickly. Let's go and do that. Gonna get a bit bumpier while we go around. Excuse me for that. Just you seems elephants have had an absolute party here. Find a suitable gap through the trees. Looks like we got them just in time. Carrying on down the road. That blonde male that we joined, he's definitely, I don't know what he's busy doing, but he's definitely not happy with something. He's just walking, contact calling the whole time. One of these males yesterday was getting a bit cross with the vehicle, so I just want to watch how I approach them. Not that they're exhibiting any signs of distress at the moment, to be honest, but it's always a good thing. No matter how comfortable you think you are with these cats, it's always a good thing to take some time to judge their mood before you just drive in. Magnificent. I've no doubt that these three are going to stand up now and move off with the two that have just gone down the road. There we go. A big stretch. They're probably quite stiff after all the exertions from yesterday. And then I just want to show you, when we've finished looking at this male, when he goes around the corner, I want to show you what happens when male lions fight with one another, what a very common wound is. On the lumbar region of this male here on the left, you'll notice that he's got quite a prominent scar. That is very typical. That scar that you're seeing there, that's a very typical bite mark from a lion being attacked by another male. So he was at some point caught by another lion, and that is a tooth and a claw mark. And that can be paralyzing. It's a crippling bite. That's why lions do it. So the skull and the lumbar region are where lions first target. They're just fighting face to face, nothing much. But when they're fighting to the death, when they're fighting for a proper fight, that's where they go for. I think let's follow these other lions. If we're going to be hearing them roar again, I want to be with the bigger lions. He's giving us a hairy eyeball on our way past over there. So these lions are now lying down here. Good. Let's hope they roar one more time. I would really, really love to have the chance to listen. I'm just going to try and squeeze past. Would you like me to sit there? Yeah. Alrighty. Sunrise with a lion. These seem to be the new kings on the block. Now, if you just excuse me, I'm just going to be on the radio for a little bit to update everyone on the sighting. So you're going to hear me talking. It's me just talking on the radio. The station's relocated on 5 Maduro and Gala. They are static on Vultures Nest Road by the big Balanites. Just one station in this position. It's Stefan. Yeah, that's affirmative. Miss Jin has just asked me which are the bigger lions, the Matimbas, Hairy Belly and Ginger, or Blondie and his four and the rest of the coalition. That's a good question. I would say that Ginger are bigger lions, even though I think that this blonde male that we were just following now has a bigger body. He's not as tall, not as rangy. I think they're probably weighing around about the same, give or take a few kilograms. That hairy-bellied male that is part of the Matimba coalition is an enormous male lion. He really is big. Easily looking at about 250 kilograms or 500 pounds there, easy. Whereas these guys, I think that the younger of the males here, the four brothers, are in the region of about 200 to 220 kilograms, maybe slightly less than 200, with the blondie male looking like he's around about 230, 240 kilograms, which is big. That's big for male lions for the Kruger National Park. after having seen lots of male lions in the Kruger, I can honestly say that Hairy Belly is the hairiest, tallest male I've ever seen in the Kruger. With this blonde male that we've just been having a look at, uncommonly big. I've seen lions his size before, but he is uncommonly big in body. His mane is still quite small. As you can see, they've got a full fuzzy mane, but the long black hairs that are so prevalent in dominant male lions are not visible at the moment. They will start to come in the next year or two. Keep an eye on these lions. For those of you that have taken screenshots in the last couple of days, bookmark them and correspond the photos this year to the photos next year if we're still lucky enough to see these guys, and you will notice a drastic change in their manes. Now, with us talking about lion prides and lion takeovers over the last couple of days, and lions moving in, and the need to kill cubs and get their genes into the system as fast as possible, and we're creating this impression that lions need to do everything at double pace. And it's true to some extent. Kay has just asked us, how old do lions get? What's their longevity in the wild? And Kay, the answer to that question is around about 9 to 12 years for a male, with the average being somewhere between there. The average is 9 to 12 years. I have seen males around about 12 to 13 years. I have seen male lions literally hold on to an area for a couple of months and then lose it. But it would seem that between 9 and 12 is the average lifespan of an adult male lion in the wild, with a female between 12 and 16 years. I think we've got some lions coming down the road behind us. Oh no. Well, yes. I woke up this morning with my neck a bit stiff, so turning left is a little bit of a challenge for me this morning. One of the signs of spending too many years bouncing around in Land Rovers. Bree, good morning Bree, you've asked a nice question here. Would a lion that's in a coalition have a different skill set to a lion that has to hold a territory on his own? And we were almost snuck up on by a lion over here. The answer to that question, Bree, is I think that all male lions are capable of holding their territories on their own. I think that all male lions have the capacity for that, but I'm going to give us the other side of the coin. I think that in a coalition, a lion's personality is allowed to shine through. Now, that might be quite a controversial topic with me saying that lions have personalities, but I'm a firm believer that that every lion has this. Some are more aggressive than others. They learn through experience. They definitely do. And in a coalition, that experience, that tempers, that character is allowed to shine through. So lions that are more active in mating or more active in fighting or at the front of the queue when it comes down to hunting or whatever the case may be, they're allowed to shine in a coalition, which just makes the coalition stronger in my opinion. However, like I said, I think that every single lion has the ability to hold a territory on their own, just through years of natural selection. You know, it's not lion numbers have been on the decrease for hundreds of years. You got things like drought, disease that play a part. I'm sure that if you go back in the history pages, even before man had had an impact on lion numbers. You would have seen lion numbers fluctuate wildly between different types of climatic conditions and whatnot. And through all those challenges, this survivor gene has stayed part of them. They're really super cats. I think with them lying down like they are at the moment, it's going to give us a chance just to reposition our vehicle. While we do that, I think Jamie's got something to show you. Shame I've been hogging the limelight this morning. So we're going to send you over to Jamie, and we'll catch up with you in a little bit.
So guys, good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I have Andrew, the aardvark, on camera with me. And in front of us we have Zeus, a very large, very distinctive male kudu with some spectacularly widespread horns. He really is quite beautiful. He's unfortunately tucked away in some fairly thick bush at the moment, but we did just have to stop for a regularly seen kudu character. So I hear that you've been having a fantastic time with Steph and those Birmingham boys, and we have had reports of the nkuhumas on a buffalo kill sometime last night around Gowrie Gate. So I've been trying to follow up here. Their tracks are up and down and all over the place, so I'm still just looping around to see what I can find. I'm not sure exactly whereabouts that buffalo kill is. There's tracks of that large buffalo herd everywhere as well. So I've just been driving along and then stopping to listen. I did a little bit of a walk, but no luck in one particular block. So we're going to keep searching, but I'm very impressed with the Nkuhuma pride. They've done very well considering the pressure and stress that they must be under, to have managed to kill another buffalo sometime last night. A big thank you to Chris and Rob in the UK for letting us know about that buffalo kill. I'm still trying to get hold of Lee to find out exactly where it was, but for now I'm going to see if I can track them myself. They spent a lot of time lying and sleeping in the road, and from there they've either gone north towards Sandy Patch Road or they've gone south towards Impala. It's very difficult to see because they've been pacing up and down, which is typical when you're tracking lions that are on the hunt, because the different pride members do split off and move in different directions. So an exciting morning planned. I'm very impressed that the Nkuhumas have decided to stick around the way that they have, and I'm sure we're going to find that buffalo kill. It's just a matter of really thoroughly checking the area and making sure that they are around. And last night was absolutely incredible. Listening to 5 male lions roaring is quite an impressive sound, or at least 3. I only identified 3 individual roars, but really cool. And I went to bed with that sound and woke up hearing that sound. So it's interesting. They've really sort of strongly establishing their territory around there. So those are my plans for the morning. This kudu is tucked away into the thick bush, so I think it might be time for us to head out and see if we can find out where those nkuhumas have gone. I do just want to check the Buffelshoek boundary so that I make sure that they haven't crossed sometime during the night, and then we're going to loop back around to where I had the last tracks. So I've looped around to the north here, so I'm fairly far from where I had the last Nkahuma tracks. I just wanted to make sure that they didn't pop out of a block somewhere, so that we don't spend the whole morning trying to track them when they are in fact in Buffelshoek. So I'm going to loop back around, and while I do, I am going to pass through quite a bad signal area. So I'm going to send you back across to Steph, who is with the Birmingham boys, and I will continue with my tracking mission. As soon as I find a nice spot where I can show you how difficult the Nkumas have made life in terms of walking up, down and side to side, I will bring you back across to show you. But for now, enjoy the Birmingham boys, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
Well, welcome back to us. And it's a good thing Jamie's tracking the Nkumas and see what happened to them last night. And while she's doing that, we're enjoying a sunrise with these big male lions. And as they've been filing past us, we've been noticing that each of them are carrying a different set of scars around it. The male lion that we saw yesterday when we first found him with all the holes in his face. Oh, behind us is some elephants that are screaming. It sounds like they are busy having a big fight with one another. Doesn't sound like they're coming in this direction, but we're definitely going to keep our ears peeled. Just in case they come running up behind us. You never know with these elephants chasing each other around the bush. Have a look at that view there, sunrise. It's a really beautiful day today. The rest of the coalition is lying on the other side of that tree that you've got in the top left-hand corner. They've just got up to move a little bit. Never quite know why with these guys. Dr. Debbie has asked, do these lions grow any taller, or is this how tall they're going to be? Dr. Debbie, I'd like to say that they are probably going to stay the same weight, but they will get a bit taller, and in so doing they will lose some of their bulkiness. That is something that I have seen with male lions before, is they get a little bit taller, but they lose their bulk as they get a bit older. They don't seem to deflate as such. I think they just grow into their bodies, really. At the moment, these guys are like wrestlers. Now, around us at the moment, I'm just hearing these elephants crashing through the bushes at the moment. They're still quite a way off. I'd say probably 300 meters or so. We're just hearing trees smashing and elephant trumpeting and wow, something's upsetting them a lot. So Vilma, I'll get to your question in a moment, but this male lions have just poked their head up. They're listening to something has happened. So it's not the elephant that they're listening to, which are trumpeting their heads off still, but something around their carcass. Maybe. Oh, here we go. What's happened? Get ready for a roar. Well, there you have it. It's 5 male lions roaring like they're shaking the ground. That was insane.
That was incredible.
This whole car was shaking and doing its thing. Congratulations. I still think Hairy Belly roars better than what you do though. So, to come back to your question, Vilma, what was your question? Let me just get that again. Please excuse me in the excitement of hearing the roaring. Ah, yes. Okay. So sorry about that, Vilma. If males are nomadic, if males are nomads or alone, how do they form coalitions? Now, you get the most common way, Vilma, of coalitions forming is from the same pride. Not necessarily brothers, but more commonly brothers from the same natal pride. It will be cubs of around about the same age, give or take a couple of months. Usually brothers will form coalitions with one another. But in the case of a lion like Junior, he may very well team up with a male lion from a previous litter, even years previous, that has left the natal pride, that he has some connection with. I've never read any material anywhere that says that lions or male lions form coalitions with other males that are outside of their natal pride. I've never ever read anything like that. It's not to say that it doesn't happen. I've by no means read every book that's ever been written on lions, and I am not a scientist, but definitely coalitions are formed through related males, not necessarily of the same litter, commonly from the same litter, but not necessarily from the same litter, but definitely from the same pride. Wow. Now that roar, when we got here, what was quite evident was all these males were facing due south. They were facing south, and when they spun around to listen to something, they spun around completely and looked to the west. Now, that says that they're either answering a challenge from other males in the west, which is quite possible. I mean, there's other lion prides in the west of the Sabi Sand. But their main threat is from the south, from the Matimbas, and I think that's exactly what they're doing. Djuma, as I've mentioned before, is a place that there seems to be a void in male lions. There's just the Matimbas here, and with the Birmingham boys moving in, they're moving into this vacuum and filling this void, and I think it's just a wonderful time and a wonderful space for them to fill. Actually, there's lots of lions around here, lots of females, lots of prides. There's more than enough lions for everyone, and an empty space for male lions. So it's going to be good to see what happens here over the next couple of months, I must be honest. Kay's just sent through a message saying that her dog and her cat almost jumped out of their skin with those roars. Isn't it fantastic to see that domestic animals, even though they have never ever learned or heard a lion roar before, still react with instinct to the roar of a full-grown male lion? Funny enough, I met a gentleman a couple of years back that used to breed with Jack Russell Terriers, and he used to breed the dogs specifically as tracking dogs, and he used to know which dogs to keep and which dogs to sell to pet stores by putting newborn pups on a lion skin that he had inherited from somebody, and the puppies that stood their ground and growled while they were on the lion skin he kept, and the puppies that whimpered and moved off are the ones that he sold to the pet store. And unorthodox and definitely a bit crude, but very effective way of breeding working dogs for the bush. I just thought it was a very interesting way of doing it, tapping directly into that instinct that we all carry, that lions seem to bring to the surface from time to time. As the day heats up, the frequency of those roars will drop down. The efficacy of their roars will diminish, and they won't put as much effort into roaring. Starting to roar again around sunset once the air calms down a bit. I have no doubt this will probably be one of the last few roars that we hear for the day, but let's just see. We'll count down how long it takes. There's around about 10 to 15 minutes between their roaring. Let's see what the time span increases to now. I did actually notice one of these lions is quite a deep puncture wound above his one ear, and Karen in Oregon has just asked if we can potentially see it. And Karen, the lion that has moved behind those branches at the back is one of those lions have that hole above his ear. This one that we're looking at right now is in perfect condition. The one that is lying behind the bush that we can just see is in good condition. But I did definitely notice a scar there. I didn't have time to pick up my binos, so I couldn't tell you if it's a scratch mark or a puncture wound. But it definitely won't do anything to hamper him, I don't think. Lions are pretty resilient to being scratched and bitten. But we'll definitely, if we can get a chance to move around, we'll see if we can see what that is. During this these high energy takeovers, it's quite common for them to pick up wounds and scars. Some of them they carry for the rest of their lives. The last time I witnessed a five male coalition take over a pride was some years ago, probably in 2003 or 4, and one of the males actually had his eyeball ripped out of his head by a fight, and another male had his nose and skull partially crushed, and they carried those scars until they died as old male lions. The one-eyed male and a male with a skew face, and that was literally just fighting older males. Also a 5 male coalition taking over a 2 male coalition, and also in the Sabi Sands, funnily enough, albeit a bit further south of here. Oh, he's beautiful. Have a look at those eyes. Oh, here we go. So much for my 10 or 15 minute come on. What was that? He wants to roar. Now, for all my years of looking at lions, I haven't ever touched a lion, or I hadn't ever touched a lion until I'd been guiding for about 10 years in actual fact. And I had the chance during a lion that we darted to sit and feel a male lion, to rub his fur and to run my fingers through their mane. And you'd think that a lion's fur is soft, it's dense. I would have thought it was very similar to a house cat's, but it's very thick and very coarse and very spiky, and their skin is incredibly thick. It's really like nothing that I've ever felt before. It's not at all what it looks like it feels when you're looking at them like this. You won't be able to, for instance, run your fingers through their mane. It's very thick. And the fur on their body, even though it looks short, is probably about half an inch thick or half an inch long. It's really a bizarre coat, I must be honest. Here you can quite clearly see a scar, a scratch mark on top of his face. It's probably from a feeding ruckus with his 4 brothers. If they killed something small, for instance, like a warthog or an impala, the frenzy around that kill is just insane. And that looks very similar to other claw marks I've seen where one of his brothers would have slapped him on the top of his head with his claws extended, and the claw got stuck in his skin, and as he pulled his face away, it left a nice new scratch to identify him with. So Lynn would like to know, why do lions always seem to sleep with their one paw flipped over like that? Lynn, I wish I could answer that question. I do see it. I have noticed it almost every single time that lions sleep. I've also noticed it on my house cat, that they have the most bizarrely flexible poses that they like to sleep in, and I think it's just comfortable. It's a similar thing to how you sit perhaps with your legs curled up underneath you to the left or to the right or folded across. It's just a preferential thing, I think. I don't think it means anything in particular. Risa wanted to know, with us looking at this lion, if it's not a challenge if we look a lion directly in the eye. And Risa, yes, absolutely, I would say that it's a challenge, but not from where we are in the vehicle. Us looking at a lion, plus the headlights of the car, plus the camera lens, it's all a bit disjointed. And I don't think we pose that much of a threat. I do see if we drive straight at cats, it can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. But definitely when you're on foot, absolutely when you're on foot, if you break eye contact with the lion, quite often they charge those 2 or 3 steps closer. So it's definitely important that you maintain eye contact with the lion in the bush, absolutely. And that's definitely just a challenging thing. You staring that lion down, most anything else in the bush will turn around and run away. But if you can force yourself not to and stare that lion down, it is intimidating for them. And really the only way to get out of there safely. But I'm quickly just going to be on the radio again. I'm hearing that there's some of our colleagues wanting to get in here, and I've had it turned down. So excuse me for 2 seconds. The station's just an update. The 5 Madura and Gala are still stationary on Vultures Nest and Glela with at the Balanites. There's just myself in this position. I'm presenting at the moment. You're welcome to make your way in if you'd like. I'm just listening to the replies. Looks like there we go. These half-hearted attempts at roaring, I don't know what he's busy doing. I'm not sure what he's up to at the moment. Starts a roar, brothers don't join in, realizes it's not worth the effort, and carries on with his day. Isn't that just a beautiful bushveld picture? Lion, sunrise, sky. We've got some vultures crying over our shoulder, squabbling over the remains of that carcass. Got elephants trumpeting in the bush off to our left-hand side, not too far away. Seasons changing. We can expect a lot of the trees to start flowering within the next couple of weeks. Definitely between now and the middle of September, we're going to start seeing a flush of different flowers on different trees, with the acacia starting and shambok pods, and then the tree wisterias, weeping boer beans. Everything's going to start flowering. Although the bush won't really thicken up for a while. You're looking at the new buds on the leaves coming in probably around about the end of October only. We'll start seeing a noticeable difference in the greenery around here after the first rains start. But definitely a very similar change to what we witnessed in, say, April through to the end of May. We're going to be seeing in September through to the beginning of October. Gradual change in the bush from this brown flat grass. There you go, just a big stretch. Curling his toes up. Yeah. Look at that fat belly. Got some buffalo in it. Quite hazy today. There was a slight wind blowing when we drove through from the Manuleti this morning, and it is kicking up dust every day. The little bit of wind that August brings kicks up a bit more dust into the atmosphere, which is good. It's that's going to help the first rain start. Dust in the atmosphere is absolutely necessary for water droplets to form around, and that is how we're going to get some of our first rain as soon as moisture from the Indian Ocean blows in again. Which should be around about the second week of October, around plus or minus a few days, where we get our first big rains. Even though we can expect a few rains in September, we won't get our first big rains, and by big rains I mean 20 millimeters plus or so. So referring to my comments a little bit earlier on how lion fur feels, Tina has commented, what does the black fur feel like on the back of a male lion's ear, on the back of a lion's ear? It looks so soft. Tina, it's pretty much the same hair all over the lion. It's probably about half an inch long, and quite sharp. The hair, if you rub their coat against the grain, it actually pricks you. Whereas if you run it with the grain, it almost feels oiled. It's like a very thick fur. And their ears are very similar to that. Their ears are softer than the rest of their body, similar to the fur on their bellies. That white fur on their bellies is also quite soft, and on the inside of their legs is quite soft. But definitely not house cat soft. It's a very coarse, thick, sharp hair, hard hair. Having a look at these lions, one lying on his back with his belly fully exposed, the other one closer to us with his eyes closed. You could well imagine that these guys are we're flies on a tree here. We're not even sitting in a vehicle with a big camera pointing at them from 10 feet away. And we've just been asked on Twitter whether or not these lions are about as habituated as what the Matimbas are. I would say absolutely, Carol. I'd say that they are about as habituated as what the Matimbas are. Male lions are always difficult to judge. Excuse me, Cheryl. Male lions are always difficult to judge. 99% of the time they're calm, but there is always that 1% that you get them one day when they've been charged by something or been in a fight, and literally they can turn on a dime. I've watched male lions that we've been able to approach for years, charge vehicles for nothing more than getting too close to a female, too close to a cub. And that has actually made me quite cautious when approaching any lion. I usually approach up to a point, switch off for a bit, see what they're up to, and then I'll start the vehicle and approach again, no matter how comfortable we are with those lions. I don't just ever drive straight in at a male lion. They can be quite temperamental. Normally, once they are habituated, they are fine, but absolutely when they're not fine, they are quite scary in an open vehicle with no sides. And I suppose a burning question in everybody's minds at the moment is what has happened to the little lion cub carcass? And Heather was the first to ask the question this morning. Good morning, Heather. That's a good question. I don't actually know. I was expecting, as we found the big male this morning, for him to be sniffing in the bushes around there for what was left. He didn't pull anything out of the bush. I can only presume that either vultures, hyena, or these lions ate that little carcass. That is the only realistic outcome that we can think of at the moment. To say that they ate it, I'm not too sure. To say that vultures ate it, possibility. While they were drinking, hyena might have come in. There were hyena calling around that carcass this morning, so definitely all feasible. And the next question that comes to mind, I'm sure all of you have been asking yourselves this question, and Kathy's been the one to Kathy Navadia has been the one to voice it. Would the Styx lioness mourn the loss of her cubs? That's a good question. It's something that we've been debating for the last couple of hours around the breakfast table and around the lunch table. My opinion on it, Kathy, is that there will be a degree of mourning. You can absolutely see it in the body language of a lioness that's lost a cub. You see them sniffing around and calling, contact calling. This doesn't last for very long. It lasts for about an hour or so that I've seen. And then the lioness generally moves on and doesn't display any other further outward signs that she's in distress or looking for that lost member of the pride. I don't think that they can afford to mourn the loss of cubs, to be quite honest. I think they do to a degree. I don't think it is as deeply emotional as what it would be for us. Don't forget that lions have lots of babies and hold on to their babies in their bellies for a very short space of time, giving birth to fairly helpless young, because the adult in the pride is more valuable than the cubs. It's very different for primates, and very different for an animal like an elephant or a rhinoceros, and then very different for humans, of course, is that we invest a lot of energy in one baby, in one offspring. And because of that, we have a much deeper tie and a much deeper emotional tie to our babies or to our young. And it's necessary. You need that deep-rooted emotional tie to a youngster that you've invested a lot of energy in, to make sure that it survives or has the best chance of survival. Lions are not like that. Lions are very similar to birds or to insects in that degree, in that they have lots of babies very quickly and can reproduce very quickly after losing babies, so that they can get through tough times. And this is just one of those tough times. Male lions taking over a coalition is a tough time. It is a difficult time for Pride members. So I think I've probably over-explained myself again. I tend to waffle on a little bit. But to answer your question, yes, to a degree. Is it as deeply emotional? No. Not that I've ever witnessed myself.
Dominated by these female and males. Have a lot of females around. The female we saw in the buffalo down there, they're dominated by that sheep, and far south there is the sixth pride, which is already dominated by these females, which is some of the cubs we know we said that over here.
So I want to give Charlotte out of Port Elizabeth in South Africa a big hello and welcome to the show. And if this is not your first time you're watching the show, definitely is the first time it seems that you're asking a question. So welcome aboard. And you want to know, is there a dominant member of this particular coalition, and would he dictate the movements of the coalition? It all depends on what they're doing at the moment, in my experience, Charlotte. In my experience, there'll be one lion out of the coalition that is dominant in hunting, one that is dominant in mating, one that is dominant in protecting the pride, one that's dominant in fighting, and not necessarily always the same one. So depending on what activity they're doing, that male lion will be dominant in that event. Even though they can all share it. Unlike male lions that hold coalitions on their own, that have to be everything. They have to be the protector, the hunter, the father, they have to be everything. So definitely, depending on what they do, is there will be one male lion out of the 5 that'll be more, it seems to take the lead, I should say, be more, or show more leadership characteristics, be more dominant in that particular one. But using the word dominant is probably the wrong phrase, because it gives off the feeling that one male lion is better than another. All these 5 males are equally, they share equally the dominance of this pride. They're all equal members. One is definitely not more dominant than another. But I think it would be a good time to go through to Jamie and find out what she's been up to. I'm sure she's got an update for you on what those tracks of the Nkuhumas are doing. And while we enjoy the sunlight and the flies starting to bug me, we're going to send you across there. Enjoy it. See you in a bit.
So guys, welcome back, and we're starting to piece together a bit of the mystery of what happened last night. So apparently the buffalo kill that the Nkuhumas made was quite a young one, so they finished it off very quickly and then moved across into this block. So I've done a lot of walking around here. We did pick up on some very, very fresh female leopard tracks as well, and the guys have just called me to say that they've got the tracks of the Nkuhumas crossing M boundary. So it looks as though they might have escaped us, but I'm going to just loop around and double check from that side. I did lots and lots of climbing up onto termite mounds and searching for them. I didn't realize that the buffalo carcass was such a small one. So let's loop around, because the leopard tracks head straight towards where they killed the small buffalo. So let's see if she's maybe headed across to try and nick a little bit of that carcass. And it definitely seems, I'm just listening to my game drive channel, but it seems as though the Nkuhumas have crossed M across our boundaries. So it's time for us to move on to different things. So I was out walking in the block, and Brenda and I had a very similar thought. So Brenda was just wondering if it's not a little bit riskier to be doing bushwalks at a time when there is a pride takeover happening, just because those lions are a little bit more on edge. So Brenda was wondering what kind of precautions we take, what would we do if we let the Birmingham boys on foot. I did have a similar thought in that I think the lions are going to be a little bit more unsettled, but I don't think it makes it riskier for us to walk them, no more so than normal. I think it might just make them more likely to run away, but you never know. That's the most important thing to remember about walking in the bush, is that even if you think you know the animals, if you walked them before, you think you know how they're going to react, you never actually do. Because it could be that one of the females was injured in the buffalo hunt or injured by one of the Birmingham boys, and it makes them just that little bit more aggressive. And it's quite important to bear that in mind while you are walking through the bush. If I met the Birmingham boys on foot, typically the general rule with lions is that the males are not as dangerous, or at least not as aggressive as the females tend to be. The females tend to be very, very defensive, and in my experience, the males tend to be far more likely to run away. So I think with the Birmingham boys, it's most important to remember the most important rule: you never, ever, ever run away from lions. You definitely can't outrun them, and you instantly inspire that chase instinct within them. So the typical scenario is you walk through the bush, you're tracking through the bush, and you encounter the lions and they start growling at you. You immediately stand your ground. If they start to charge you, you start shouting, you make yourself look big, which in my case is a fairly difficult task, but you make yourself as big as possible, you shout a lot, you make your voice nice and deep, not sort of high-pitched screaming, because that does not going to help your case at all. And you make sure that you maintain eye contact with the one that seems the most threatening. And in my experience, the one that is the most threatening is not the one that's making a lot of noise and standing and making himself look big. It's the one that's lying down with ears flat and tail lashing. And those are usually the ones that tend to do a sort of silent, quite scary charge. The most important thing if you are being charged by the lions is to stand your ground. Make sure that you keep eye contact, and then when they stop charging, then you take that opportunity to back away. And what often happens when you are backing away is that inspires a sort of second charge, because they feel like they're winning, and you've got to stop then. You don't keep backing away if they are charging you, and then you keep going like that until you have reached a safe distance away from them. So I think that there is a case to say that with the pride takeover, the lions are going to be a little bit more on edge. Whether that makes them more likely to charge or whether it makes them more likely to run away depends on the situation. While I was tracking those lions, and my mind was sort of quite well focused on where the lions have gone, I did pick up on those female leopard tracks, as I mentioned earlier. And it's amazing how when you're walking and you're focusing on one thing, it's very important to remember that there are other animals out there. I've done it before where I've been tracking lions. I'm so busy looking for lions that I nearly walked into elephants. So it's important to keep that in mind. So now that we know that the Nkuhumas have crossed across our boundary, I'm going to spend a little bit of time trying to figure out who this female leopard is and which way she's gone. She did cross across from where I last saw the tracks into this block here, so I'm going to be looking around for her now. However, I know that Steph has repositioned and he's got another view of the Birmingham boys, so I'm going to send you back across to him for now, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
Welcome back to a sunlit cat. The boy that we were having a look at, he's walked off to go and join his brothers, not too far away from where we are at the moment, just around the bush on the other side. It looks like they've gone through to lie in a little clearing that might get some shade a bit later. Leaving this guy to bring up the rear. He's just finishing off his snooze. Now here that Jamie has found the tracks of the Nkuhumas crossing out of Djuma, which is unfortunate, but they'll be back. That's how it goes. And then Colin out of Johannesburg just asked, would these guys tolerate Junior amongst their midst if he had to? No, I don't think that would be at all likely unless Junior was incredibly submissive when they met one another. At the moment, Junior would be, with his natal pride, he would not be welcome to join this coalition at all. And at the chance that they do meet one another, for him not to be attacked, which is a small possibility, he'd have to be very, very, very submissive. I've seen before when male lions about Junior's age have been taken on by a coalition, and the only way that male survived was literally by offering up his belly and his throat to the males that he met. They didn't attack him for whatever reason at that time. But I could expect a very similar sort of behavior from these guys in Junior. So with them lying flat like this, I know Jamie was busy talking about all this lion activity around the reserve and how dangerous it is to walk through here now with all this activity. And absolutely, if you come walking through here and you don't see this male lion lying behind this bush, there's every chance that you could be almost on top of them before you see one another. And at that point, you may very well be within the fight or flight zone of these males. Now, generally speaking, male lions will always just get up and run away from you, to be honest. But it's not always the case. Sometimes they have got nowhere else to go, and then you have a bit of a standoff. Generally, though, here, things don't just want to jump up and kill you for no reason. We're quite scary things, human beings. And usually with just a little bit of a standoff where you let them know that you're not scared of them, even though inside you are. And I'm sure the feeling is reciprocated. Creating distance usually calms things down. So you backing off, maintaining eye contact until a safe distance away. For us to go and look for something else this morning. Myself and Brian need to get the juices flowing here in our bodies and get some heart rates up. So I think that would be a good idea if we pulled out of this particular sighting and left them to their morning relaxing in the sun and in the shade, and we'll see if we can catch up with them this afternoon or potentially a bit later on in the drive. But for now, let's head out and see what else we can find. Goodbye, big guy. Have a nice morning. just going to be grabbing a stick from close by here on this weeping wattle, and I'm going to do that to mark the last position that we saw these guys in, just in case they move. I mean, there are male lions that are busy taking over a pride at the moment, and who knows what they're going to get up to during the day. It could be anything. So I'm going to drop a stick on the road where we saw him last, and that'll give a good marker for anyone wanting to relocate these male lions a little bit later on today, or even have a look at, I'm going to see if I can show you this. It just proves my point about how camouflaged big male lions can be when you're walking in the bush. That's quite often all you see. Of a male lion in the bush when you're walking. Obviously with the benefit of a zoom, it's a lot easier to see him, but as you saw from that would be our angle. We're no more than 25 feet from that line, and you can see there's lots of open space there. Definitely got to keep your eyes peeled in the bush. Anyway, go with your message. Just on the radio, everybody, so if you hear me speaking to a third person, I don't, it's a good question. I need to go and find it, to be honest. We saw a lot of hyena tracks on Central Junction, Cheetah Cutline yesterday, and this morning we had vocalization south of the old den close to Philemon's pump. I was actually going to ask you the same question yesterday. I thought that you'd have an idea. So sorry about me speaking like that on the radio. It was just one of our colleagues wanting to know if I had an idea as to where the hyenas have moved to, where the hyena den has moved to. And it was actually Texan that I was going to ask, because he's been here for, I don't know, 27 years or something. If there was one person on the reserve that would know where the hyena den is, it would be him. But he says he hasn't got a clue. So definitely something that myself and Brian have been speaking about tracking. We need to go and track an hyena, see where they're going, which is an exercise that might take days to do, considering the fact that they can walk up to 60 kilometers in one night. But we'll start at all their old den sites and then we'll move out from there. But it's interesting. It's an interesting puzzle to know what and where these hyenas are going. Absolutely. For now, I haven't seen a leopard in a while, and I think I'm going to go and put some effort into trying to find out something about leopards. With all the lion activity that's around at the moment, leopard are going to be a bit difficult to find, but I like the challenge. We are going to go through a bit of a signal dip area here, so if I do get a bit shaky and if the picture does break up, stay with us, it won't be for very long. Some updates from a guest that came through the reserve. Just to finish that sentence, sorry man, I got a bit distracted with trying to see what tracks are over here on the road, and I missed out finishing what I was going to say. There's an access road here, and one of the guests that arrived late last night to one of the camps said that they saw two leopards crossing over the road in close to this area, and which moved into our part of the reserve, into Juma. Go and see where those two are first, and see which direction they're going in, and then see if we can put effort into finding them. I think it'll be a worth.
So guys, welcome back. I apologize for our signal issues. We were just struggling a little bit there with Steph. And I'm just back where I last saw those female leopard tracks heading straight towards the buffalo carcass that the Nkuhumas apparently finished off last night. So I just want to have a look, poke my nose into this block, see where she's gone. Tracks come off along here. A steep hill. You will fairly slowly. Dust clouds. Up we go. So the buffalo carcass was somewhere in this block that the Nkuhumas got. Let's see if we can follow through here, find out where she's gone. See the tracks of a vehicle coming through here.
Here it is.
There we go. So she must have come and had a sniff here. Well spotted, Andrew. So there we go. Very, very young buffalo. So not much meat for 7 hungry lions. Looks to be just under a year old, just a couple of months old. Just gonna hop out and have a look. See if that leopard came to have a sniff around here. So the tracks of this leopard came straight towards the buffalo carcass, but I'm surprised they didn't stop to have a look and maybe have a bit of a snack. Maybe she did. See the lion tracks coming through. They've devoured this pretty much completely already. There's nothing left. And obviously the Nkuhumas not too keen on sticking around close to the Birmingham boys. They ate quickly and then moved on. And it looks as though our female leopard did come and have a look, had a sniff, maybe even had a nibble, but then moved on. And I think maybe we might be looking at Shadow's tracks. Looks to be about the right size. I'm sort of starting to get to know the leopard tracks and sort of how big they are. It's definitely a female. Very possibly Shadow's come through. She might have headed off, she's headed off sort of in this direction. She might have gone to fetch Sindile or just head across and check up on him. So we're gonna leave this buffalo carcass. There's not much meat, although there's plenty left for scavenging hyenas. And let's see if we can loop around and see where she's gone. She did come and have a sniff. Her tracks come through on this game path and then carried on. So not too sure where she's gone. There's lots of lion tracks as well, which makes life a little bit confusing, but it looks like she goes off in that direction. So let's see if we can follow up on her. Pick my way through the monkey orange. And with a carcass like that, it probably took the Nkuhumas less than half an hour to devour that, especially if they were feeling particularly hungry after all of their tension regarding the run-ins with the Birmingham boys and the fact that they lost their buffalo carcass to them. So they were probably finished and through that very, very quickly. And then the leopard came through shortly afterwards and had a bit of a sniff around. Her tracks are on top of all of their tracks. Oh, there's a bit of a marula tree there. Now we've got to make our way back down that little hill that we climbed up. Although I actually think it might be easier to go this way. Slightly less of a dip. So she was probably resting up or moving through that block across here and heard all of the commotion. There was a very, very large herd of buffalo that moved through. She probably heard the kill and waited until the Nkuhumas were finished up and she knew that they'd moved off, and then came to investigate what was happening. Unfortunately, she probably discovered that there was not much meat left there. So I think that this female leopard who came to sniff around at the buffalo carcass would have been more than capable of claiming that carcass as her own and hoisting it into a tree. But as I said, there's not that much meat left on it, and definitely nothing left of the good stuff. But a leopard like Shadow could definitely have pulled it up into a tree. It is, as I said, a very, very young buffalo. She probably just decided that it wasn't worth the effort. There's not much meat left. And possibly if it is Shadow, oh, bless you, Andrew.
Thank you.
If it was Shadow, she might have been more anxious to get back to wherever she's hidden Sindile. Especially with apparently the Anderson male moving around in that area. She's probably trying to keep quite a close eye on him. We had a look briefly at that buffalo carcass, and it, as I said, it is young. And the reason that I said that is just looking at the size of the horns. They tend to grow fairly early on. They start to get their horns growing up from the growth points at 2 to 3 months of age. They start to come through as little bumps. But by a year old, they start to develop that slight curve that the horns have. And in that case, I think that one was just under a year old. Possibly somewhere around the 10-month mark. It's a guess, but I'm just working off my observations of horn growth in young buffalo. And for a leopard to take down a buffalo is not unheard of, but they typically will be very, very cautious, especially with breeding herds. Breeding herds can be exceptionally dangerous enemies to take on. And it's one thing if you are a 100 to 200 kilogram lion, but a slightly smaller leopard faced with a buffalo herd, and buffalo are known to very, very firmly defend their young. So although some of the larger male leopards have been known to sort of catch the calves on the outskirts of a herd, it is a very risky business for a leopard, and typically they'll tend to avoid it. And that makes absolute sense. For a big pride of lions, it's worth the risk because you've got lots and lots of mouths to feed, and they are large animals that have very high energy requirements. So it's worth the risk of taking down a buffalo, especially when you've got, as the Nkahumas have got, a nice big young male like Junior to help you take them down. But for leopards, it makes far more sense for them to target slightly smaller prey that is less dangerous, because it's only one mouth, or possibly two or three if the female has cubs. It's only a couple of mouths to feed, and you don't, in this kind of environment, want to risk any sort of injury to yourself or to your cubs. So generally, leopards tend to target smaller prey. The females will go for the small animals, typically steenbok and duiker, and the larger males will then start aiming for things like kudu. But even a big kudu is quite a risk for a male leopard. It has to be a very big male leopard, sort of the size of one of our big males like Tingana, the Anderson male, or Mvula, to really ensure that they are safe. But that being said, leopards don't always play by the rules either, and there are reports of male leopards taking down even baby giraffe. So they are incredibly effective and powerful hunters, even for their size. They're slightly smaller build than the lions. And I've even seen two male cheetah who are much less stocky, much more fragile looking. I've seen them take down a large kudu bull, which was incredibly impressive to watch, because that kudu probably had at least 100 kilograms over the combined weight of both of those cheetah. And they just use their sheer momentum from their speed to knock it over and take its legs out from under it. Very windy today. Perfect hunting weather for all of the predators. Interesting with leopards as well is that some are much more amenable to the idea of scavenging than others, and I think that is just a character thing more than anything else. Obviously a very, very hungry leopard will take whatever it can get, but there are certain leopards in different areas that tend to scavenge a lot more readily than others. Whereas something like a cheetah will almost never scavenge an old kill. They typically want fresh meat, they'll eat their kill, they won't even stay by it for longer than a day. And that's partly an adaptation to being much smaller than most of the other predators in this area. So they need to feed and then get out of the area so that they're not in any danger. one of my favorite open areas on this reserve. It's nice to see these big natural clearings, and this is perfect hunting ground for something like a cheetah. There's just that right balance of cover so they can sneak up on their prey, and then open spaces so that they can get up to their top speed. Stop to have a look at these female kudu. The one got a little bit of a fright as we came in, but this other female is quite relaxed. And on days like today, we'll find that lots of the prey animals are very, very alert. This one seems quite comfortable. She's just nibbling on some bush willow. And kudu are typically almost entirely browsing based, but I have seen them eat grass before, which goes to show you should never ever put on a general rule for any animal. Oh, just stretching up there. And what we'll see with all of the prey species at the moment, we've got some others moving in across to the left, but they're all going to be feeding straight into the wind. So they will move into the wind, and that's partly because they want to make sure that they smell any incoming threats, and so they move into it so they hear or smell. Otherwise they're going to get caught very much by surprise if they feed against the wind, because then something can sneak up on them from the front, but also because of the tannins that are released by the plants as part of a defense mechanism. So when plants are fed on, they release these tannin-like molecules that actually make the leaves taste rather unpleasant. And not only does the tree that's being fed on release it, but it will blow across and stimulate the production in other plants as well. So they feed into the wind to make sure that the other tannins aren't affecting the trees that they are going to go and feed on. I have counted 7 crossing. This is now the 8th. You can see how very much on alert they all are. They are feeling pretty skittish, which is common on windy days like this. But definitely one of the most beautiful and graceful antelopes out here. And those long legs are unbelievably powerful. I've seen a kudu jump a 6-foot fence from a standing start before, without even a run-up. They are incredible jumpers. But they are not built for long stamina runs. And that's part of an adaptation to the environment that they live in. Here comes the 9th. So they are better adapted to short bursts of speed and hiding in sort of thick vegetation and escaping predators that way. Not sure what this one's got on her neck there. She's got sort of mists of discoloration spots. I'm not sure if it's flecks of mud possibly just she's got a genetic coloration there. And heading off out of the open area, which generally tends to make them fairly uncomfortable, and into some thicker, safer bush. And just while we are here, Kimberly, you were wondering what it is that we have on the dashboard, or at least sitting on top of my monitor here. And the answer to that is I've decided this is my new mascot. Might be a little bit macabre, but this is a jackal skull that we think was the jackal that was killed by the female leopard. I think it was with Scott, and it was a side-striped jackal, and it was a sighting that Scott had where the leopard killed it in whilst live. And you can see, I mean, there's not much left of it. We'll just have a look at it because they do have such impressive canines, and it wasn't actually something I'd realized until we got to have a look at the skull. It took us a little while to figure out what it was. We had to sort of look up a dentition and all of those things, but it is definitely a little jackal skull. Very, very tiny. I mean, if I put my hand here, you can see it's a very, very small skull. But yesterday it brought us plenty of luck in terms of viewing, so I think I shall keep it around for now. Just pop it back on my monitor. There we go, safely secured in there. And we shall carry on with our female leopard search. I'm not so happy to see the flies back again. They're definitely out in full force. And I think that's largely due to that very large buffalo herd that moved through the area yesterday. So we have them to thank for the flies. And although I always rejoice at the coming of summer, I could do without the flies. And at the moment we do have a sort of rather skeleton staff right now. We've got Andrew and Brian on camera and just Stefan and myself presenting. So a lot of people are out and about throughout South Africa on leave or doing other things. And Jill, you were wondering if I'm enjoying the peace and quiet with the boys gone. Yes, most definitely. It is certainly more peaceful. However, I must say that I'm sure I'm not alone in that we miss their hilarious antics and certainly James's amazing guitar every now and again. We get treated to that whilst he's sitting around the table or around the fire. So yes, nice to have a little bit of a break. James and Brent, and I think, what day is it today? Is it Wednesday?
Thursday, I think.
Is it Thursday?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so I never know what day of the week it is. It's quite a challenge for me. It's just one of those things that I don't really need to know until I go back to the city. But Liam is back tomorrow in that case, I think. Either tomorrow or Saturday. So we'll be looking forward to having Liam back, the wildebeest back. And then we'll have a full or close to full complement of staff sometime next week. However, just as they all get back, I will be off on leave and back home to visit my parents and my little brother. I'm just going to head across to the zebra. There was a little bit of a show going on just as I drove up. I just want to see if hopefully they stick around and we can have a look at what they're doing. seem to be in high spirits. Going to stop here so that I don't disturb them in any way. I just want to see if they carry on with their antics. There's a little bit of flicking and bucking, so let's see if they carry on. And zebra dynamics are always interesting to watch. You can see there's a little bit of tension in the air. And their ears are both still up, so it's not too serious. Typically when you get a really serious zebra fight, their ears lie flat against the back of their neck, and that's a real sign of aggression. This might be just a little spat or even a bit of play. And you'll see this typical behavior in all animals when they move out into the open, and that applies across the board. When they move out from an area of fairly thick bush into a clearing, they'll stop and stare for quite a while just to make sure that it is safe, because they know that there's less cover for them. So the one intrepid stallion has moved off, and this group is still sniping at each other. I haven't had a chance to see them from behind, so I'm not sure if this is a breeding herd or a bachelor herd. Oh, spooked. And I think this could well be a young bachelor herd. There's at least 2 males. The one on the right is made it slightly easier to identify him. And this sort of behavior can be quite typical of young stallion herds that are just establishing and practicing their dominance. Yes, that's also a male. So a young group of stallions banding together in a bachelor herd and practicing the skills that they will need later in life. And you can see even now how wonderfully effective those stripe patterns are when they group together like that in terms of trying to identify individual animals. They seem to blend into one another, and you can imagine how that effect would be increased 10 times if your vision was sort of in black and white, as predators would be. There is just plenty of testosterone flying around at the moment. So these young boys, they'll stay together until they reach 4 years old or a little bit older, and they can start really competing with other males to acquire their own harem, so their own group of females. And there's a sort of combination of affection, a bit like teenage boys play fighting. And serious zebra fights, if they do happen, can actually be fairly deadly. But at the moment, this is just playing, establishing their own position in the little bachelor group hierarchy. I'm just listening, and so are they, to a wildebeest alarm calling, or possibly announcing his territory in the area, because the zebra don't seem to be too stressed out about it. They're not responding too seriously to it. So it could be a wildebeest that was calling just to mark out territory. So when a young zebra male reaches sort of, I think, around 1.5 to 2 years old, the stallion and his father of the herd that he is born into will start to put pressure on him to move out, as will the females, in fact. And he will then head out on his own. He will be sexually mature, but not large enough or experienced enough to start competing for his own harem. And then over the next few years, he'll develop his skills in the same way that these boys are now, just through play fighting. And once they reach a large enough size, which sort of happens around 4 years old, but it can be a little bit later as well, they will start to move out on their own and try and compete with other stallions in the area who do have harems. And you can see there's also a breeding herd at the back that's coming through. There will be some females. There's a little fairly young zebra foal at the back. Not too young, you can see it's lost most of its fluffiness. That's very typical of baby zebras. It's reaching sort of sub-adult age, probably about 9 or 10 months old. And if it is a female, she will stay with her herd until another roaming stallion comes and defeats her father in conflict, and then she will be passed on to that stallion to form part of a new breeding herd and a new harem. Here we've got groups of females. So another fairly young sub-adult. So for the males, acquiring their own breeding herd is just a matter of reaching the size and experience necessary. And once he does reach that stage where he can compete with a stallion, it is actually quite a dangerous time. The fights between zebra can be very, very aggressive. And they will bite at each other and kick. And they have very, very powerful canines, that not canines, incisors that you can see them putting to use here in their sparring, just nipping at each other's necks. And those bites can actually, if they are seriously meant, do quite considerable damage. And often when you see a zebra missing a tail, it's not because it's a lucky escape from a lion or a leopard. It is because another zebra has bitten them. And I'm going to try and shift position slightly so that we can stay with these two fighting. If I get too much closer, it will disrupt them and they'll stop what they're doing. I just want to move us out from, get a bit of a clearer view. Stop here so that we don't disrupt them, because the rest of the herd is coming in at quite high speed. lots and lots of tension and nerves happening with the zebra herd. And there's nothing serious as far as I can see in terms of a threat or a predator. They are just, the tensions are running high, especially because it is so windy. And there we can see that wildebeest that was calling a little bit earlier. Just a male trying to establish his territory, not alarm calling in any way. But zebra and a lot of herd animals, especially on a windy day, if one of them spooks ever so slightly at the slightest noise, they do tend to startle like that. Let's see if we can get a bit closer now that they've stopped. Some very interesting and nice examples of a play fight. Find a nice clear view. They are unfortunately going to continue moving off into this block. So we're looking at all of these zebras and the bottoms look rather identical, but in fact every single zebra has a unique stripe pattern, much like a human fingerprint. And Colin from Johannesburg, I hope it is not too chilly there, although judging by the wind that we're getting it probably is a bit nippy. Colin would have liked to know if kudu's stripes are unique to them in the same way, and yes, they are. Kudu do have unique stripes to each individual, although what I have noticed with kudu and Inyala is that sometimes you get these nice sort of Y-shaped stripes, slight sort of variations in the way that they're formed. And I have noticed in the camp that I used to live in, we used to watch Inyala come through fairly frequently, and over the 2 years we got to identify them by their individual stripes, and we also got to watch them raise young babies to adulthood. And I definitely noticed a very strong link genetically between similarities in the stripe pattern. So although each one has a different stripe pattern, the offspring tend to have a similarity, similar sort of Y splits and little offshoots of those stripes, which I suppose makes complete sense in the same way that we inherit physical traits from our parents, although we still look different to them. We still have our own unique look. We do have genetic similarities. And zebra will be completely unique as well. The one sort of second from the right of the screen has got its ears flat back, and I think is still a little bit annoyed. I'm going to try and reposition because I think it's still, that male is still going to cause a little bit of tension, although they do seem to be moving off now. Lots and lots of play fighting action happening. Let's try and get a better view. I'm just going to stop here for a moment, let them relax. I don't want them to move away from us. there, that slightly ears back tilt that male is showing, and the way he's following close behind the other male. I think he is thinking about delivering a nip to the bottom. Are just disappearing off once again, constantly moving. So the dynamics here that are happening, there's probably one stallion in charge of this breeding herd that moved in behind the young males. I didn't actually see which one it was, but there will be one stallion, and this is his harem. And then this rest of the group of these young males are just sort of following behind, possibly even hoping to take a chance at competing for a female. And we've been seeing a lot of the play fighting between the males, but the females can actually be equally aggressive, especially when a male has acquired a new female to add to his harem. The older females tend to be fairly unwelcoming and often kick her and bite her for quite an extended period of time, and they just try and keep her in her place. And it's actually up to the stallion to protect her from the rest of his mares and to make sure that she stays with the group, because obviously if she's treated like that, her initial instinct is to leave, but he keeps her herded in with the rest of the females, and it can take months for the older females to start accepting a new acquisition to the group. And their hierarchy will work in that exact manner. So the first female that the male acquires will be his favorite. She will be the one who leads the group through the bush, and she will always be the highest ranking. And then the newly acquired mares will sort of assume their status beneath her. So fairly fascinating animals. They do have interesting group dynamics. They have shifted off into some thick bush, so I think we shall leave them for now, but they have been highly entertaining and very educational in terms of zebra dynamics. And they can be fairly aggressively defensive, both to predators and to, as I said, other zebras. And my dog actually learned that the hard way. She went out into a clearing, went to investigate some zebra, and came back very fast with tail between legs, with a stallion very close behind her. So she learned very quickly that zebras are not to be tangled with. Around, because there is a road right next to this group. See if we can get them. I think they are going to move off. So as our zebra disappear off into the bush and across the road into just north of our Arethusa boundary, Dory from Wisconsin, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's great to have you aboard with us. And you would like to know if all animals have territories that they protect or if it's just predators. And this was actually a great sighting for us to talk a little bit about that, because we had two different animals who have a unique approach to territorial approaches. So the wildebeest that we heard calling, they are animals that will hold a territory. So the male will hold a nice territory. He'll try and get the best. And obviously for them, that means good access to water and good grazing potential. So he will try and find and compete for and defend the best area of land. And then he works on the assumption that that will bring the females to him. Now, the zebra kind of work in a different way. So they're not territorial, although they do have home ranges that they move around in. But the male will acquire his females, keep them with him, and then move through different areas. And then we did also briefly have some impala as well, and their approach is also a different one. So the males will only acquire a breeding herd during the breeding season, so end of May, beginning of June, and they will defend and keep those females together only for that time period. And then after that, all sort of territories or anything like that actually goes out of the window. They will have a home range that they prefer to be in, but they don't necessarily stay in a territory or defend a territory. They defend a group of females. So some animals do have territories. Typically it depends on males, females. It's different for each. The approach is different for each species. So for something like a rhino, the males will have territories. The females don't really care. They will move around and do as they wish. And the males will also tolerate subadult males who move through, especially if there's access to water, and even other dominant males, provided that those males don't show any territorial signs. So they don't urine spray or scrape their dung in any way while they're moving through that territory. Elephants, no territories at all, but they do sort of move around in home ranges, but that can change throughout the years, especially because they're such long-lived animals. What else have we got? Warthogs are not territorial, but they will have a home range. Something like a steenbok or a duiker, all of the dwarf antelope will defend tiny, tiny little territories, and they'll defend it together as a pair. So the male will fight off other males, and the female will fight off other females. But if the male comes across a sort of lone female who's strayed into his territory, he won't fight her. He will just try and mate with her without his mate realizing what's going on. So a lot of different approaches to territorial markings and home ranges. And a territory is defined as an area that is actively defended and marked. A home range is just where the animal moves through. So slightly different, and it is not in any way defended. It's just where they spend their time. So I'm sure you've all been wondering how Steph's leopard tracking has been going. Unfortunately, he hasn't had no luck, but I'm sure he'd like to just fill you in on his experiences. So we're going to cross back across to him, and I'm going to see if I can be less blinded by the sun for a start, and then possibly follow up on these female leopard tracks. I'll be back with you a little bit later.
Well, welcome back. We've been hot on the search for some leopard for you this morning. I know we were having a few signal gremlins when I lost you the last time, so I'm just going to give you an idea of why we are where we are. Last night on one of the main access roads, one of the guests coming into the camp said that they saw two leopards crossing into our property, crossing into Juma. And I went this morning after we saw those male lions lying around to see if we could find them, and almost immediately we found some fresh male leopard tracks. So myself and two other rangers are in the area, combing through the area. I've already been on foot following up on the male leopard's tracks. He comes from this bush on our right hand side. His tracks come into this area over here, and I did see older tracks of a female leopard. So the story as I have it in my head at the moment is he was coming up this way, he met with the female that was already in this area. Together they were seen and together they are moving, because Andrew, one of the other rangers here, has got fresh tracks of both of them together. So that's the story as it's building in my mind. And now the trick is, how do we find these two animals? And that is easier said than done. So usually with male and female leopard together, it doesn't always mean that they're going to be mating with one another. It may mean that the male is joining with the female just to see where in her estrus cycle she is. They'll be together for a bit and then they'll move off again. But from what these tracks are telling us, it looks like they are together, so it's a good thing. So to find mating leopards, you really have to drive and stop and drive and stop and listen. They'll be mating, if they are mating, they'll be mating every 5 minutes to 15 minutes. And the hope is that you can switch off your car and get audio of one of these cats doing their thing. It's just timing it right, that's it. So, for all of you that believe in wishing luck, wish us luck, cross your thumbs, go stand underneath a 4-leaf clover or whatever we need to do. There are 2 leopard right here where we are somewhere, and we're hot on their trail. I was thinking this that So, Kay, we're going to stop over here and we're going to listen for a bit. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be answering a question from Kay in Washington State. Does a melanistic or a black leopard stand a better or a worse chance at survival out here? And is the trait a dominant trait or a recessive trait? Now, Kay, I'd say that the least camouflage you are, the harder it would be for you to survive out here. And although a black leopard will definitely have an advantage at night time over a traditionally colored leopard, there definitely is better value to extend your hunting range throughout the day and the night. And I'd say then a traditional colored leopard, or the leopard that we all know from photographs, would stand a better chance. And it's why we don't see as many black leopards here. You do, however, get black leopards in the more thicker bush areas or jungle areas as you approach the equator. And their black leopard, because they're hunting under a canopy, their black leopard do very well. And you see a lot more black leopard as adults there than you do here. As to your question on dominance, the dominant gene is the normal color gene. The black gene or the melanistic gene is a recessive gene. And so yes, a black leopard could absolutely have normal colored cubs, and usually does have normal colored cubs, but they will all carry the recessive black gene. So even with that recessive gene, you can have 2 parents that are normal colored that give birth to a black leopard as well. Now we're just listening. While we're listening, we are going to be doing a link back to Jamie. My signal in this particular area on this car is jumping a little bit, and rather than me doing a stuttered version of a game drive, we're going to send you back through to Jamie, and we'll keep you updated as we have more news.
guys, welcome back, and we do apologize for some of the signal issues that Steph has been experiencing. I'm sure our tech geniuses are hard at work trying to find those gremlins. So still no sign of these leopard tracks coming out, and I'm starting to think that maybe she pulled a bit of a sneaky on me and carried on and then looped back to where she came from. She might have just popped out to investigate what all of the noise was about and then looped back into where she came from. So I'm going to have to double check around that area as well. But for now I'm just making doubly sure that she hasn't crossed into this area somewhere. All of a sudden the temperature has increased tremendously. It took me quite by surprise. I've been chilly right up until this exact moment, and now I'm too warm. And I know that Steph was chatting to you a little bit about melanistic leopards, and I'm desperate to find that new active hyena den site, because there was a little bit of controversy about whether or not that little hyena cub, the young one, is in fact an example of a melanistic hyena. So with the time period that has passed since we last saw it, there's a good chance that if it's developing spots, we would have seen them. So I'm keen to see if we can relocate that active hyena den. We have been trying, no luck yet, but if we could be able to see that cub now, we would probably know for certain whether or not. And I've absolutely never heard of melanistic spotted hyena, so this would be a major first for me, and I must actually do some research into it and see how often it happens. Presumably it does, but it must be highly, highly unusual. No, it flies going. Monica, welcome to the Sunrise Safaris. I do hope you've been enjoying our live safaris over the last few days. And Monica, you would like to know if we get any ostrich in the area. And there are ostrich around. They tend to favor the more arid areas, so maybe sort of towards the north of Kruger. But they are in Kruger National Park. I have seen them. I have yet to see them while I've been working here on the Sabi Sands. I don't know, Andrew, have you ever seen them?
It's a negative.
Okay. So it's not really entirely the right kind of environment, or the right, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really the right kind of habitat for ostriches, but apparently the crew have seen them at Manuletti before, and obviously this whole area, thank you elephants by the way for that roadblock, this whole area is open and there's no fences stopping them from coming in. So it is a possibility. It's just because the landscape isn't quite right and the level of rainfall isn't quite right for what they are adapted for. They tend to be birds that are very, very well adapted towards arid, lacking in rainfall environments. So Monica, it's a possibility, but not something that's happened here yet. We always keep an eye out for them. They are fascinating birds, and I always keep an eye out for their track as well, which is a very bizarre sort of two-toed track with one very large toe and one tiny little toe. So interesting birds, and often a type of prey that's favored by cheetah, who are one of the only animals who are fast enough to catch them. I'm going to stop here just because I don't want this little female to do exactly what she just did. It's okay, little girl. Just since we were talking about territories, it's a nice example of a little animal with a tiny, tiny sort of football field sized territory that her and her mate will defend quite vigorously. And even though they do mate for life and they do move through the same tiny territory. Typically, they tend to prefer to spend the day with time apart. So they forage apart from each other, usually only 100 or 200 meters away from each other. So her male will probably be somewhere around here, unless she hasn't managed to snare one yet. And you can see how wonderfully well that camouflage works. All we can see at the moment is just that little ear and face nibbling away. I'll try and sneak forward, or if I can. Just trying to see where the clearest view might be. And right now, with her tail dropped down like that, she is very, very cryptically colored. And you can see how easy it would be for her to run and hide. Now, underneath that tail, she's got a very, very vivid white patch. And when steenboks startle and they run away, they lift up their tail and they expose that white patch, which immediately attracts your attention. So they'll bounce around while they're running away from a predator with that white flash very, very clear. And then all of a sudden they'll stop dead and drop their tails and disappear in the same way that she has now. And the predator's eye will have stayed focused on where they last saw that white patch. And then they can just use those split seconds advantage to escape from the predator, because they might just be a couple of meters to the left or to the right of where the predator last saw that flash. Let me try and shift forward, because she has sort of disappeared into that block. One last view of what is a very, very pretty little antelope. And the dwarf antelope are fascinating because there are quite a few of them, all evolved to fill a very similar ecological niche. So in this area we've got the common or the grey duiker, and then we've got the little steenboks, and we've also got a very, very unusual antelope, and I've yet to see one here, although I did see them fairly regularly where I used to work. But probably the most uncommon mammal sighting to have around here, that's a tiny little antelope known as a Sharp's grysbok. So they are around. I will be very, very excited when I do get to see one. I'm not sure if any of the WildEarth viewers have yet managed to see them. I doubt it. They are very, very unusual in this area. But a fascinating group of antelope, because there are so many different species of dwarf antelope, and yet they all full, and they feed on a very similar diet. So they do a lot of browsing, sort of digging for forbs and roots and eating little shoots of grass. So almost identical diets, almost identical environments, although the duiker maybe sometimes tend to favor the drainage lines just that little bit more. And yet they are completely separate species that do not interbreed with each other. So really interesting little things. And up towards the mountains, we might even start to see the red duiker, which is a slightly smaller, really pretty little antelope. And then the smallest member of that family, which is the blue duiker, is more towards the coastal forests, but really stunning little creature, probably only about this big in height. So really, really tiny, one of our smallest antelopes, and very sweet looking things, but exactly very similar niche, hiding away in thick vegetation and very secretive. As the seasons start to change, we're going to start to see a lot of the migrant bird species returning. And Lynn, you would like to know when the woodlands kingfisher will return to Djuma. And they're actually one of the latest migrant species to arrive. It will probably only be in around November, although you do occasionally get the odd bird who's mistimed it and come back a little bit earlier. But we will let you know. And we're going to very, very soon start to see some of the earliest returning migrants. So I know that James, I'm not sure if you're watching this morning, but James was wondering if the lesser striped swallows have come back. And I still haven't seen any yet, but I did see the red-chested swallow. So they are back. And we're going to, some of the other earlier migrants, we're actually going to start getting the Wahlberg's eagles and the steppe eagles back again very, very soon. As well as the cuckoo species. We're going to start to hear them as they start calling for their breeding season.
Brian said he heard a woodlands kingfisher, but I'm not sure if he knows what the woodlands kingfisher sounds like. But he said he heard it.
So I'm not sure about Brian's hearing of a woodlands kingfisher, but I know that Steph is currently listening to the various sounds around Twin Dams. So we're going to cut back across to him and see if we can hear anything, including possibly the mysterious early woodlands kingfisher.
Well, welcome back, and myself and Brian are sitting over here and just listening to the bush. We've got fresh leopard tracks moving into this area, male and female leopard tracks. There's a chance that they're mating. For us driving around, it will only help so much. By far and wide, the best thing to do is to just sit and listen. And so it's a good thing you're going to come and sit and join us while we listen to the bush around us. We're listening for that telltale growl and rumble of leopards that are mating. They're very similar to lions in that the female doesn't like to be covered, and quite often as soon as the male withdraws, the barbs at the end of his penis create seems like some pain, and the female quite often swats him with quite a loud roaring and growling that goes over, and it's telltale for this, or diagnostic sign out here. There, what you're looking at there is a Birchall starling, one of the prettier birds that we have out here. Not migratory. I hear Jamie's been talking to you about migratory birds, with Andrew even claiming that he heard a woodlands kingfisher. Now for this time of the year, not likely. Oh, sorry, Brian, not Andrew claimed, excuse me, my memory is being juggled today. Claimed he heard a woodlands kingfisher, which is probably true if it was somebody's ringtone on their mobile phone, but definitely not this time of year. They come mid to end of November, beginning of December is when the woodlands kingfishers return. This starling, however, is giving us a nice show. They're insectivorous birds, so he's looking for insects, termites, grasshoppers, even small mice and lizards. They'll take things like that, even using those long legs to outrun potential prey. And you'll see they pretty much go from dung pile to dung pile, lifting up the dung this time of the year to check what's underneath it. And that beautiful sheen, that iridescence on their feathers comes from the fact that their feathers are actually black, completely saturated in melanin, but with a very thick keratin layer over the feathers, which give them that sheen as light is diffused through a clear keratin layer, very similar to your fingernails, only a lot clearer, on each filament of their feathers. And as it twists and turns, very similar to, I suppose, an old CD would diffuse light through the spectrum. So we're getting light diffusing through that spectrum before it's absorbed by the black feathers. Now, most of the starlings do not migrate, but one of my favorite starlings, the violet-backed starling, is also due back in the next couple of weeks. And that is one of my favorite birds, let alone one of my favorite starlings. A beautifully colored bird. Brilliant males have brilliant white chests and a iridescent violet red back. Not to say that these are not pretty birds. Disappearing behind the Land Rover. They'll probably come out around the side of the car here. But now, when leopard mate with one another or are mating with one another, this will happen every 5 to 15 minutes. So it works if you are waiting in an area for, say, 20 minutes. If they haven't done it then there's a good chance that they're not in this particular area. It doesn't say that they're not around, it just means that they're out of earshot of where we are at the moment. So we're going to give it another 5 minutes. That's a 20 minute that we've been waiting in this area. I haven't heard anything yet. There was some impala a bit earlier, drinking a bit earlier, but no other sign of anything. Sure you can hear and see the effect of the wind on some of these bushes and trees around. There's quite a stiff breeze blowing. I wouldn't say it's quite a gale just yet, but it's quite stiff and would definitely be hampering the ability for me to hear what's happening in any one direction, especially with ears the size of mine. They tend to make quite a lot of disturbance, and sounds like jet airplanes in my head when the wind is blowing loud or hard. You can see the bush is nice and dry. Believe it or not, that in summertime every single one of the trees that you're looking at the moment will be green, covered in a thick, lush coat of leaves. The bush really does go through a dramatic change throughout the seasons, I must be honest. So we've got some oxpeckers that are busy calling in the distance. I just want to scan with my binoculars and see what it is. Oxpeckers are, of course, birds that are associated with any number of animal. This time of the day, coming down to drink probably some kudu or some impala or a giraffe. I can't see anything just yet, although I can hear these oxpeckers. It'll be interesting to see what they are sitting on in actual fact. I can't see anything. They're not flying, they're definitely calling from a specific quadrant. Let's see what's happening here. Oh, don't forget, you're welcome to send through some questions to me at the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or email questions@wildearth.tv, and we'll try and answer as many as we can while we can. So we have got some impala coming down to drink, which is what the oxpeckers were sitting on. And Edward has asked me a question. I don't have any flies on me now, Edward, which is except on the top of my head, which you can see. I can feel there's one there, maybe two. It seems to have flown away now. The wind has blown away them all at the moment. So the question is, do any of the flies that we have over here bite? Some of them do. They're not these little ones that are flying around me now. If you don't shush them off your face or off your hands, they have got a little bit of a sting to them, but nothing like the flies that you find further north of here. Nothing anywhere close to a tsetse fly, which feels like somebody has taken a dart and has thrown it into you. And for those of you who have been lucky enough to travel to, not so much Botswana anymore, Botswana in the olden days, but some parts of Zimbabwe, definitely Zambia, and some parts of Namibia, I tell you, the tsetse flies that come and swarm you over there are something phenomenal. You build this twitch of smashing your face and smashing your legs. I've even seen pilots forget about what they're doing in a plane to smash a tsetse fly that was locked into the plane. Funnily enough, and luckily this wind seems to have calmed the flies down a little bit. When we were sitting with those Birmingham boys a little bit earlier this morning, there were around about 50 or 60 flies swarming around us, and they were driving us both insane, myself and Brian. Brian actually puts a mask up over his whole face. You can't see anything, just glasses and a buff over his face to stop the flies from bothering him, so that he doesn't shake the camera too much. But see, these impala are slowly making their way down this valley. I'm going to just reposition slightly so that we can get them coming down to drink. I think it'll be quite nice to watch them drink, and also give us a little bit more time. And I also see there's a brown-headed parrot that's flown into this tree over here, which might come down for a drink. Let's see what we can do. Some of the better grasses that we have over here are actually oh, there we go, brown-headed parrot, another one of my favorite birds out here. We only get the brown-headed parrot here. As you go further north, you also get the mayor's parrot, and then you start getting some lovebirds as well. But right here we just get the brown-headed parrot, and a very cute parrot at that, I must be honest. Ah, there we go, down to the water. Awesome. They live in mated pairs with one another, monogamous pairs. They mate for life, and will almost copy one another in what they do. It's part of strengthening their bonds with one another, doing synchronized flying, synchronized calling. That's actually beautiful. Give you an idea of their size. They're about lovebird size. For those of you who have some pets, maybe a bit bigger than an average lovebird. And you sometimes see them in flocks, not really more than 10 birds at a time, nowhere near the lovebird flocks that you get in Africa, or the budgerigar parrot flocks you get in Australia. waiting for these leopards to make a noise and for these impala to make their way down this little drainage line and for some more birds to come about, I thought that I'd answer an earlier question from Blair in Canada, who wanted to know, with all the activity that we've seen in the last couple of days with the Birmingham boys, them killing a lioness, one of a lioness, we don't know which one at this point, but a lioness, with them roaring the way that they're roaring, scent marking the way that they're scent marking, and killing other lions' cubs. Does this mean that they've managed to take over this area? Could we call it a pride takeover, or are we still in the process of taking it over? Blair, that's a very good question. Generally, I'd say that only when the dominant male lions have been run out of this area and you see the male lions mating with females, would I say that the process of the pride takeover being finished. So when you see those 5 Birmingham boys actually physically lying next to and interacting on a social level with either the Styx lionesses or the Nkuhumas, that is when I would say that this pride takeover has finally taken place and cemented with the fact that the females will allow the males to mate to them. But having said that, females can even hold off estrus for up to 100 days to allow other stronger males in the area from coming in. So I don't think that the saga's over just yet at all. I think that we have yet to see the end of all of this. But today's been a fantastic day for us. I mean, the wind is blowing. It's going to be an interesting afternoon, I think. And especially if the wind is blowing. We've had a good time, myself and Brian.
So guys, welcome back, and for me a fairly unsuccessful morning spent tracking. I didn't manage to find my Nkuhuma pride. They crossed across our boundaries just before I could get there, and then that female leopard has pulled a little bit of a sneaky maneuver on me somewhere. I'm gonna have to go back and see exactly where it was that she doubled back or what she did. She's disappeared off somewhere, but still an amazing morning and such a cool zebra sighting to get to see them interacting in that way with those young bachelors, just sparring a little bit with each other and demonstrating how well zebra interact and a little bit more about their dynamics. And Sibusiso, aka the Black Mamba, you were watching the show and wondering if, because zebras have such flexibility in their ears, can they move them around to indicate their mood in the same way that a domestic dog or some of your pet dogs might do? So when they lie with dogs, when they lie their ears flat, it means they're unhappy, they're slightly aggressive, or just feeling very uncomfortable. And yes, absolutely they do, in a way that very similar. Some of the viewers might have had quite a bit of interaction with horses and done horse riding. And in the same way that ears back for horses means they're in a bad mood, the same goes for the zebra. And that's why they've got that wonderful black across the back of the ears, and that applies for almost all animals. Those ears are so important in terms of indicating their mood and communicating that. Because just remember, the animals don't talk to each other in the same way that we can. They need to convey their communication in different ways. So the ears and the tail are probably the most important, as well as sort of the facial expression and the lips. So excellent question. Yes, they do. Ears flat back means aggression. Ears up and sort of pointed forward with a staring expression, that means that they're focused on something. And then with ears just flicking around from rotating side to side, they are nice and relaxed and just listening to what's happening around the area. So a very interesting few days in terms of lion dynamics, and we know that it has been a difficult few days for all of us and many of the viewers. The Nkuhuma pride have now moved away from the Birmingham boys, so we can rest easy about them for now. And before we close off, just a quick message to Emily Wallington. It is her birthday today, so very, very happy birthday from myself, Andrew, and the whole WildEarth crew. We do hope that you're having an amazing day wherever you are, and have a fantastic, fantastic birthday. And just so that you know, Emily Wallington is Graham Wallington's wife, so one of the big bosses of the WildEarth company. So, as always, thank you for joining us on this wonderful sunrise safari. It is a very, very windy morning, which bodes well for the afternoon because it is great hunting weather. So Steph and myself will be out and about for the sunset safari. A big, big thank you to Andrew and, of course, to Brian for his early woodlands kingfisher idea, which definitely isn't a possibility. Thank you to Tara and Jess in FC and Eugene for all of his technical genius. Thank you to you, the viewers, and we will see you again for the sunset safari this evening. Cheers, guys.